A modern corporate office setting at night, with rows of desks and computers illuminated by soft overhead lighting. A middle-aged man in a suit, visibly tired but determined, sits at his desk reviewing documents. Nearby, a young woman with a warm yet exhausted expression works diligently on her laptop. The atmosphere is quiet and professional, with large windows showing the city skyline glowing in the background. Focus on the contrast between the man's authoritative presence and the woman's quiet dedication. Part 1. Document. It was another long evening at Technano Inc., where the hum of computers and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights filled the air. Jeremy, the CEO, sat in his glass-walled corner office overlooking the workspace below. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, and a cup of cold coffee sat forgotten on his desk. He had been working nonstop for hours, going over quarterly reports and planning strategies to keep the company ahead of its competitors. Out of habit, he glanced down at the floor below. Most employees had already left for the day, their desks empty and chairs pushed in neatly. But one person stood out, Lisa. She was still seated at her desk, typing away furiously. Her dark hair framed her face as she leaned forward, completely absorbed in whatever task she was tackling. Jeremy sighed. Lisa always seemed to be the last one to leave. Night after night, week after week, she stayed late while others went home to relax or spend time with family. Jeremy didn't know much about Lisa personally. She wasn't someone who spoke up often during meetings, nor did she hang around in social circles within the office. Yet her work spoke volumes. Every project she touched turned into gold. Deadlines that seemed impossible were met without complaint. Mistakes? Practically non-existent. If there was anyone in the company who embodied dedication, it was hers. He watched. Jeremy noticed something small but telling. Lisa paused mid-typing and rubbed her eyes wearily. Then she reached for a water bottle beside her keyboard, only to find it empty. Without hesitation, she stood up and walked toward the break room. That's when Jeremy realized he hadn't seen her eat all day, not once. And knowing how hard she worked, it wouldn't surprise him if she skipped meals regularly. Curiosity tugged at him. He couldn't explain why, but he felt drawn to ask her directly. Leaving his office, he made his way downstairs. The sound of his polished shoes clicking against the tiled floor echoed softly in the nearly deserted space. When he approached Lisa's desk, she looked up, startled. Her wide eyes met his, and for a moment, neither said anything. "Hey," Jeremy began awkwardly, shoving his hands into his pockets. "You've been here since early this morning, haven't you?" Lisa nodded cautiously. "Yeah, just finishing up some things." "You must be hungry," he continued, trying to sound casual. "Have you eaten yet?" She hesitated before shaking her head. "Not really, I'll grab something later." Jeremy frowned. "Grabbing something isn't good enough. You need proper food. Let me order takeout for you." To his surprise, Lisa smiled faintly but declined politely. "Thanks, but I'm okay. I'll pick up dinner on my way home." Her response puzzled him. Why refuse help when it was offered? Was she being polite, or was there something else behind her answer? Before he could press further, Lisa gathered her belongings and announced she was heading out. Jeremy stepped aside, watching as she slipped on her coat and slung her bag over her shoulder. For reasons he couldn't fully understand, Jeremy found himself following her. As she exited the building, he lingered behind, waiting a few moments before stepping out into the cool night air. The streets outside were quieter now, with fewer cars passing by and streetlights casting pools of golden light onto the pavement. Lisa walked briskly, her breath visible in the chilly breeze. Jeremy trailed her from a safe distance, feeling both guilty and intrigued. He told himself it wasn't stalking. It was concern. Or maybe it was curiosity. Whatever it was, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Lisa than what he saw at the office. And as he followed her through winding streets and into neighborhoods unfamiliar to him, he braced himself for whatever truth might unfold. By the time Lisa stopped at a small grocery store, Jeremy's mind raced with questions. What would she buy? Would she finally treat herself to a decent meal? Instead, he watched through the window as she picked up basic items: bread, milk, canned goods. No fancy snacks, no indulgent treats, just essentials. When she emerged from the store and continued walking, Jeremy's unease deepened. This wasn't just about skipping meals. Something bigger was going on, and he was determined to find out what it was. Little did he know, the answers awaited him just around the corner, and they would change everything he thought he knew about Lisa, about himself, and about the responsibilities he carried as a leader. A dimly lit street at night, with a young woman walking briskly along the sidewalk carrying a paper bag of groceries. Behind her, partially hidden in the shadows, stands a middle-aged man in a suit watching her intently. The scene is set in a modest neighborhood with old apartment buildings lining the street. Warm light spills from windows, creating a contrast against the cool tones of the evening sky. Focus on the tension between the observer and the observed, capturing curiosity and secrecy. Part 2. Document. Jeremy felt his heart pounding as he followed Lisa into the unfamiliar neighborhood. He had never been to this part of town before. The streets were narrower here, lined with older buildings that showed signs of wear, chipped paint, cracked sidewalks, and flickering streetlights. It was a far cry from the sleek skyscrapers and upscale restaurants near Technano's headquarters. Lisa walked confidently, her steps steady despite the weight of the grocery bag she carried. Jeremy hung back, careful not to get too close. He stayed in the shadows whenever possible, ducking behind parked cars or lampposts when she glanced over her shoulder. His guilt grew heavier with each passing minute. What was he doing? Following. An employee home without permission wasn't just unprofessional, it was invasive. Yet something about Lisa's quiet determination kept pulling him forward. After several blocks, Lisa turned onto a quieter street. The buildings here were even older, some with iron railings rusted by time and weather. She stopped in front of a small, two-story apartment building with peeling blue paint and a sagging front door. Jeremy hesitated across the street, unsure of what to do next. Should he leave? Apologize later for being so nosy? Or should he stay just a little longer? His decision came quickly when Lisa entered the building through a ground-floor unit. The curtains were thin, offering a partial view inside. Jeremy moved closer, keeping low to avoid being seen. Through the gap in the curtains, he could see Lisa setting the grocery bag down on a small kitchen counter. The room beyond was simple but tidy, a mismatched couch, a wooden table with chairs, and a few framed pictures hanging on the walls. Then, something unexpected happened. Lisa opened the door again, and 3 children rushed in, their laughter filling the air. 2 boys and a girl, all under the age of 10, threw their arms around her waist, hugging her tightly. Jeremy froze, his breath catching in his throat. Children? He hadn't anticipated this. Suddenly everything clicked into place, the skipped meals, the late nights, the exhaustion he'd noticed at the office. Lisa wasn't just working hard for herself, she was providing for these kids. He watched silently as Lisa greeted them, warmly, ruffling the youngest boy's hair and asking about their day. The kids talked excitedly, recounting stories from school while Lisa listened patiently. Despite the cramped space and worn furniture, there was a sense of warmth and love in the room. Jeremy couldn't look away. This wasn't the life of a typical corporate employee. It was the life of someone who had taken on far more responsibility than anyone should have to bear. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. All this time, he had admired Lisa's work ethic, assuming it stemmed from ambition or loyalty to the company. But now he saw the truth. She was fighting to keep a family together. And he, as her boss, had unknowingly added to her burden by expecting her to meet impossible deadlines and work endless hours. Feeling a mix of shame and admiration, Jeremy stepped back from the window. He needed to leave, not just because staying would be wrong, but because he needed time to process what he'd seen. As he walked away, his mind raced with questions. How long had Lisa been caring for these children? Who were they? Why hadn't she told anyone at work? More importantly, how could he help without making things worse? By the time Jeremy reached his car parked a few blocks away, His emotions were in turmoil. He sat behind the wheel, staring out at the darkened streets. Memories from his own childhood began surfacing, memories he had buried deep inside. His mother, a single parent, had worked tirelessly to provide for him and his siblings. She had held down multiple jobs, often coming home late at night, exhausted but determined to give them a better life. Jeremy remembered the sacrifices she had made, the sleepless nights, the constant worry about money. Back then, he had promised himself that he would never let anyone else endure such hardship. But now, looking back, he realized how blind he had become. In his quest for success, he had created a workplace culture that demanded everything from its employees and gave little in return. He had forgotten what it meant to truly care for people. Lisa's situation reminded him of his mother's struggles and forced him to. The next morning, Jeremy woke up earlier than usual. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the previous night over and over in his mind. Images of Lisa's tiny apartment and the joyful faces of the children kept surfacing. It was hard to focus on anything else. He couldn't shake off the feeling that he had stumbled upon something deeply personal, something that challenged everything he thought he knew about his employees. At work, Jeremy found it difficult to concentrate. Meetings dragged on longer than necessary, emails piled up unread, and even the usual buzz of activity around the office seemed distant. Every time he glanced at Lisa's desk, he felt a pang of guilt. She looked the same as always, focused, diligent, and calm. But now he saw her differently. Each keystroke she made, each document she reviewed, carried the weight of responsibilities far beyond what anyone could imagine. Determined to understand more, Jeremy decided to take action. But how? He couldn't simply walk up to her and ask about her family. That would be intrusive and potentially damaging. Instead, he called Susan, the head of human resources, into his office. Susan was a seasoned professional, known for her discretion and empathy. If anyone could help him navigate the situation without causing harm, it was her. "Susan," Jeremy began, leaning back in his chair, "I need you to look into something for me. It's about Lisa." Susan raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "Lisa, what's going on?" Jeremy hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "I can't go into details right now, but I want to know more about her background. Any information you can gather, family situation, financial needs, anything relevant, would be helpful." Susan nodded slowly, sensing the gravity of the request. "Of course, I'll handle it discreetly. Is there anything specific you're looking for?" "No," Jeremy replied quickly. "Just get a full picture, and make sure no one finds out about this, not even Lisa." Once Susan left the room, Jeremy leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. He hated feeling so powerless. Normally, he prided himself on being decisive and in control. But this was different. This wasn't just about business strategy or profit margins. It was about people. Real people with real lives outside the confines of the office walls. A few days later, Susan returned with a thick folder containing detailed reports about Lisa's circumstances. As Jeremy flipped through the pages, his heart sank further with every paragraph. The facts painted a heartbreaking picture. Lisa had been thrust into guardianship of her 3 younger siblings after their parents died unexpectedly in a car accident 2 years ago. At just 26 years old, she had taken on the role of both parent and provider. To make ends meet, she worked long hours at Tech Nano while managing school schedules, doctor appointments, and household chores. Financially, she was barely scraping by, relying on budget groceries and secondhand clothes for the children. What struck Jeremy most was the section detailing Lisa's efforts to shield her siblings from hardship. She volunteered at their school. Events helped them with homework every evening and ensured they never missed a meal, even if it meant skipping hers. Despite the immense pressure, she maintained a positive attitude, encouraging the kids to dream big and believe in themselves. Closing. The folder, Jeremy sat in silence for a long time. He felt a mix of emotions, anger at himself for not noticing sooner, admiration for Lisa's strength, and determination to make things better. How could he have let someone shoulder such a heavy burden without offering support? Wasn't it his responsibility as a leader to create a workplace where employees didn't have to choose between their livelihood and their loved ones? That afternoon, Jeremy walked past Lisa's desk again. This time, instead of avoiding eye contact, he stopped and greeted her warmly. "Hey Lisa, got a minute?" She looked up, surprised by the unexpected attention. "Sure, Mr. Carter, what do you need?" "Nothing urgent," he said, forcing a smile. "Just wanted to check in. You've been doing great work lately." Lisa blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Thank you, sir, that means a lot." Jeremy nodded, then added casually, "If there's ever anything you need, anything at all, don't hesitate to let me know. We're a team here." For a moment, Lisa seemed unsure of how to respond. Then she smiled faintly. "I appreciate that, Mr. Carter. Thank you." As Jeremy walked away, he realized this was only the beginning. Saying kind words wasn't enough. He needed to take concrete steps to ease Lisa's load, and the loads of others like her. Over the next few days, he started brainstorming ideas: flexible work hours, emergency funds for employees in crisis, mental health resources. All these possibilities swirled in his mind. But beyond policies, Jeremy knew he had to change his own mindset. For too long, he had viewed employees as cogs in a machine valued primarily for their output. Now, seeing Lisa's sacrifices and resilience, he understood that they were human beings first, people with dreams, fears, and families depending on them. By the end of the week, Jeremy had drafted a plan. It wouldn't solve everything overnight, but it was a start. And as he prepared to present it to the executive board, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could turn TechNano into a place where people weren't just valued for what they did, but for who they were. Jeremy spent the weekend thinking about Lisa and her family. It wasn't just her situation that weighed on his mind. It was the realization of how many others might be silently struggling under similar pressures. He couldn't stop picturing those 3 children hugging Lisa when she got home. Their laughter filling the small apartment. How could someone so young carry such a heavy responsibility? And why hadn't anyone noticed before? On Monday morning, Jeremy arrived at the office early, determined to make progress on his plan. He started by reviewing the policies currently in place at TechNano. What he found disappointed him. While there were vague mentions of work-life balance and employee wellness, none of them offered real solutions for people like Lisa. They were empty promises designed to look good on paper but rarely put into practice. Determined to change that, Jeremy began drafting new initiatives. First, he proposed flexible work hours, allowing employees to adjust their schedules based on personal needs, whether it was picking up kids from school or attending a doctor's appointment. Next, he suggested creating an emergency fund for employees facing financial hardships, ensuring they wouldn't have to choose between paying bills and putting food on the table. Finally, he included plans for mental health resources such as counseling services and stress management workshops, recognizing that emotional well-being was just as important as physical health. As he worked, memories of his own childhood kept surfacing. He thought about his mother, who had worked 2 jobs to keep their family afloat after his father left. She would come home late at night, exhausted, but still managing to cook dinner and check his homework. Jeremy remembered the times she fell asleep on the couch while watching TV with him, too tired to even finish a sentence. Back then, he had promised himself that he would never let anyone else endure such hardship. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten that promise. Now seeing Lisa reminded him of his mother's sacrifices and made him realize how much he had become like the very people he once resented. He had built a company that demanded everything from its employees without giving enough back. Sure, TechNano paid well and offered competitive benefits, but those things didn't matter if people were burning out or sacrificing their families in the process. By midweek, Jeremy had finalized his proposals and called a meeting with the executive board. Walking into the conference room, he felt nervous but resolute. The other executives greeted him with polite smiles, unaware of what he was about to present. As he stood at the front of the room, flipping through slides detailing his ideas, he saw a mix of reactions. Some nodded approvingly, others looked skeptical, and a few seemed outright dismissive. "This isn't just about improving productivity," Jeremy explained firmly, addressing their concerns. "It's about taking care of our people. If we want TechNano to succeed long-term, we need employees who feel supported and valued, not just for what they do, but for who they are." One executive raised a hand, frowning. "These changes will cost money, Jeremy. Are you sure we can afford them right now?" Jeremy met the question head-on. "We can't afford not to. Think about it. What happens when our best employees leave because they're burned out? Or worse, when they stay but lose their passion for the job? We'll end up spending more trying to replace them than if we invest in keeping them happy and healthy." The debate went on for nearly an hour, with arguments flying back and forth. But Jeremy refused to back down. He shared snippets of what he had learned about Lisa, not revealing her name or specific details, but painting a picture of the challenges some employees faced. Slowly, the tide began to turn. By the end of the meeting, most of the board agreed to move forward with pilot programs for the proposed initiatives. Back in his office, Jeremy allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't a perfect victory. Some executives still grumbled about costs, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, he worked closely with HR to roll out the changes. Flexible schedules were introduced first, followed by announcements about the emergency fund and mental health resources. Employees reacted positively, though cautiously, unsure if these promises would actually lead to meaningful action. As the weeks went by, Jeremy noticed a change not just in Lisa but in the entire workplace. People seemed happier. Conversations that once revolved around looming deadlines and endless tasks now included laughter and personal stories. Employees lingered longer at the coffee machine or in the break room, sharing updates about their weekends or upcoming family events. It was subtle but undeniable. A shift in energy had taken hold. Lisa, too, began to open up more. At first, it was small things. She started leaving work earlier on some days without hesitation, knowing she wouldn't face judgment for doing so. Then came the occasional comment during team meetings when someone mentioned weekend plans. She'd chime in with a brief story about taking the kids to the park or helping her youngest brother practice soccer. Jeremy listened carefully each time, piecing together glimpses of her life outside the office. One afternoon, after noticing Lisa leave early yet again, Jeremy decided to try something different. Instead of simply observing from afar, he wanted to engage directly. He walked over to her desk before she could pack up completely. "Hey, Lisa," he said, keeping his tone casual. "Got a moment?" She looked up, startled but polite. "Of course, Mr. Carter. What's up?" Jeremy hesitated briefly, unsure how to phrase what he wanted to say. "I just wanted to thank you for everything you've been doing. Your work ethic is incredible, and I know everyone here appreciates it." Lisa blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." He nodded, then added gently, "But honestly, I also want to make sure you're not overdoing it. You've got a lot on your plate, and I don't want you burning out." Her expression softened slightly, though there was still a hint of caution in her eyes. "I'm managing okay," she replied quietly. "Things are better since the new policies came into place. Being able to adjust my schedule has helped a lot." Jeremy smiled, feeling a surge of relief. "I'm glad to hear that, but if there's anything else you need, anything at all, please let me know. Seriously." Lisa hesitated as if weighing whether to speak further. Finally, she gave a small nod. "Thanks, Mr. Carter. I really appreciate it." Over the next few days, Jeremy found himself reflecting on that conversation. While Lisa had acknowledged his efforts, he sensed there was still a barrier, a reluctance to share too much. He understood why. Opening up about personal struggles wasn't easy, especially to a boss. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more beneath the surface, things Lisa might not feel comfortable saying outright. Determined to bridge the gap, Jeremy invited Lisa to his office under the pretense of discussing a project. When she arrived, he gestured for her to sit across from him, trying to create an atmosphere of ease rather than formality. "So," Jeremy began, leaning back in his chair, "how are things going overall? Any feedback on the new policies?" Lisa thought for a moment before answering. "They've definitely made a difference. Having flexibility helps me balance work and home responsibilities better, and knowing there's support available, it gives me peace of mind." Jeremy nodded, encouraged by her response. "That's good to hear. Honestly, we wouldn't have implemented these changes without people like you showing us what's truly needed." She tilted her head slightly, confusion flickering across her face. "What do you mean?" Taking a deep breath, Jeremy decided to take a risk. "I mean, seeing how hard you work and realizing how much you handle outside of work made me rethink our approach. We can't expect people to give their all if we're not supporting them fully in return." For a long moment, Lisa didn't respond. Her gaze dropped to her hands, which were clasped tightly in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "It hasn't been easy," she admitted. "After my parents passed away, I didn't have much choice but to step up. My siblings depend on me for food, shelter, guidance, everything. Sometimes it feels like no matter how hard I work, it's never enough." Jeremy felt his chest tighten. Hearing her say it aloud brought the weight of her situation crashing down on him. "You're carrying so much," he murmured, "and you're doing it alone. I can't imagine how tough that must be." Lisa shrugged, attempting a weak smile. "It's just life. I do what I have to do." "No," Jeremy said firmly, surprising even himself. "It shouldn't be this hard. Not for anyone. Especially not for someone as talented and dedicated as you." The sincerity in his voice seemed to catch Lisa off guard. For the first time, her guarded demeanor cracked slightly, revealing vulnerability beneath. "It's not just me," she said softly. "There are probably others here dealing with similar challenges. They might not talk about it, but they're struggling too." Jeremy nodded, his resolve strengthening. "That's exactly why we're making these changes. To help not just you, but everyone who needs it. And I promise we're going to keep improving." Their conversation continued for nearly an hour, covering topics ranging from Lisa's daily routine to her hopes for her siblings' futures. By the end, both felt a sense of connection neither had anticipated. For Lisa, it was comforting to know that her boss genuinely cared, not just about her performance, but about her well-being. For Jeremy, it reinforced his commitment to creating a workplace where people could thrive personally as well as professionally. When Lisa left his office, Jeremy sat back in his chair, feeling a mix of emotions. There was still so much to do, but he knew they were moving in the right direction. Slowly but surely, TechNano was becoming a place where employees weren't just valued for their output, but for their humanity. The changes at TechNano continued to gain momentum over the following months. Jeremy made it his mission to ensure that every employee understood the new initiatives weren't just temporary fixes. They were part of a long-term commitment to creating a supportive workplace. To reinforce this message, he held town hall meetings where employees could ask questions, share concerns, or suggest additional improvements. These sessions became opportunities for open dialogue, fostering trust between leadership and staff. Lisa attended most of these meetings, though she rarely spoke up. However, her presence alone sent a powerful signal to others. Seeing someone as hardworking and respected as Lisa actively participating encouraged other employees to voice their thoughts without fear of judgment. Over time, more people began sharing personal stories about juggling caregiving responsibilities, dealing with health issues, or navigating financial struggles. Each story added depth to Jeremy's understanding of the challenges his team faced daily. One particular meeting stood out. An older employee named Karen spoke about how the flexible hours had allowed her to care for her aging mother without worrying about losing her job. Her words resonated deeply with everyone in the room, including Lisa, who nodded in agreement. Afterward, Lisa approached Jeremy privately. "That meant a lot," she said softly. "Hearing Karen talk, it reminded me that I'm not alone." Jeremy smiled warmly. "None of you should feel like you're alone. That's why we're doing this. to build a community where people support each other. Encouraged by moments like these, Jeremy decided to take things a step further. He promoted Lisa to a leadership role within her department, recognizing her exceptional skills and dedication. At first, Lisa hesitated, concerned about taking on even more responsibility. But Jeremy reassured her, emphasizing that her promotion came with access to additional resources and support systems designed to ease the transition. "You've earned this," he told her firmly, "and you'll have help every step of the way. This isn't about adding to your plate, it's about giving you the tools to succeed while still prioritizing what matters most to you." Grateful but cautious, Lisa accepted the position. As she settled into her new role. She found herself collaborating closely with Jeremy on implementing the company's evolving policies. Together, they worked to refine existing programs and introduce new ones, always keeping employee well-being at the forefront. Their partnership grew stronger with each passing day, built on mutual respect and shared goals. Outside of work, Lisa noticed positive shifts in her own life as well. With flexible hours allowing her to attend school events and doctor appointments without stress, she felt more present for her siblings. The emergency fund helped cover unexpected expenses, such as a broken washing machine or rising utility bills, easing some of the financial strain. Most importantly, Lisa no longer felt like she was fighting battles alone. Knowing that her employer genuinely cared about her well-being gave her a sense of security she hadn't experienced in years. Meanwhile, Jeremy continued reflecting on his journey. Watching Lisa thrive in her new role reminded him of the lessons he'd learned from his own mother, the importance of compassion, resilience, and leading by example. He realized that true leadership wasn't about authority or control. It was about empowering others to reach their full potential. By supporting Lisa and others like her, he wasn't just building a better company. He was honoring the values he'd once sworn to uphold. As the months passed, TechNano underwent a transformation, not just in policies but in its overall culture. Employees who had once dreaded coming to work now looked forward to it. Productivity soared, turnover rates plummeted, and morale reached an all-time high. Clients noticed the difference too, praising the company for its innovative spirit and customer-focused approach. But perhaps the most significant change was internal. Employees began looking out. Months passed, and TechNano flourished under its new culture of care and support. Employees weren't just happier, they were thriving. Projects that once seemed overwhelming were now tackled with enthusiasm and teamwork. Morale was higher than ever, and Jeremy couldn't help but feel proud of what they had accomplished together. Still, there was one thing missing, a personal closure to the journey that had started with Lisa. One Friday evening, as the office emptied out for the weekend, Jeremy made a decision. He grabbed his coat, scribbled a quick note about being out of touch for the rest of the day, and headed toward Lisa's neighborhood. This time, he wasn't sneaking around or feeling guilty. He was going as a guest, someone who wanted to show appreciation in a way words alone couldn't express. When Lisa opened the door, she looked surprised but pleased to see him. "Mr. Carter, what are you doing here?" "Just thought I'd stop by," Jeremy replied with a warm smile. "If it's okay, that is." Lisa hesitated briefly before stepping aside. "Of course, come in." The apartment was just as Jeremy remembered, simple but full of warmth. The mismatched furniture and faded wallpaper didn't detract from the sense of home created by the laughter of children playing nearby. Two of Lisa's siblings, the younger boy and girl, peeked curiously at Jeremy from behind the couch, while the oldest boy sat quietly at the kitchen table finishing homework. "This is them," Lisa said, gesturing toward the kids. "Everyone, this is Mr. Carter, my boss." Jeremy chuckled softly. "Please call me Jeremy." The children exchanged glances, clearly intrigued by the unexpected visitor. After a moment, the youngest girl stepped forward shyly. "Are you really Lisa's boss?" "Yes, I am," Jeremy replied, crouching down to her level. "But don't worry, I'm not as scary as I sound." His joke earned a giggle from the girl, breaking the ice. Soon, all three kids were chatting animatedly, asking questions about his job and sharing stories about their own school days. "Lisa, watched with a mix of amusement and gratitude as Jeremy effortlessly connected with her siblings, treating them with kindness and genuine interest. As the evening wore on, Lisa prepared a simple dinner, spaghetti with garlic bread, and insisted Jeremy stay to eat. Sitting around the small table, they shared food and conversation, laughing over funny anecdotes and discussing future plans. For the first time, Jeremy saw Lisa completely relaxed, free from the weight of responsibilities she carried daily. After dinner, Jeremy helped clear the dishes while Lisa checked her siblings' homework. When everything was settled, the two adults found themselves alone in the living room. Jeremy took a deep breath, knowing it was time to say something meaningful. "Lisa," he began, his tone serious but gentle, "I want you to know how much I admire you, not just for your work ethic or leadership skills, but for everything you do for your family. You're an incredible person, and I'm honored to have you as part of TechNano." Lisa blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. "Thank you, Jeremy. That means so much coming from you." He shook his head slightly. "No, thank you. You've taught me so much about what it means to lead with compassion and empathy. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have realized how much we needed to change, not just at work but in how we treat each other as human beings." For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet hum of the city outside filled the space between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Instead, it felt like a shared understanding, a recognition of how far they'd come together. Finally, Lisa broke the silence. "You've changed too, you know. You're not the same CEO I met when I first started at TechNano. You've become someone people can trust, not just because of what you've done for us, but because of who you are now." Jeremy smiled, feeling a lump rise in his throat. That's the best compliment anyone could give me. As the night drew to a close, Jeremy stood to leave. Before stepping out the door, he turned back to Lisa. "This isn't goodbye. It's just the start of something bigger. For you, for your family, and for everyone at TechNano." Lisa nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. "We couldn't have done it without you." Walking back to his car, Jeremy felt a profound sense of fulfillment. What had begun as a chance observation had grown into something transformative. For Lisa, for TechNano, and for himself. He knew challenges would still arise, both personally and professionally, but he also knew they would face them together, as a team, as a family. And in that moment, Jeremy realized that success wasn't measured by profits or accolades. It was measured by the lives touched and the connections forged along the way. Over the next year, TechNano became known not just for its innovative products, but for its groundbreaking approach to employee well-being. News of the company's supportive policies spread quickly, earning it recognition as one of the best places to work in the industry. Articles were written about Jeremy's leadership style, praising him for prioritizing humanity over profit. But for Jeremy, the real reward wasn't the awards or media attention. It was seeing the tangible impact on his employees' lives. Lisa continued to excel in her new role, proving herself not only as a dedicated worker, but as an inspiring leader. Under her guidance, her team thrived, consistently delivering exceptional results while maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Her siblings, too, flourished under her care. The youngest boy joined a robotics club at school, discovering a passion for engineering. The girl took up piano lessons, filling their home with music, and the oldest brother earned top grades, setting his sights on college scholarships. Jeremy stayed involved in Lisa's journey, offering mentorship and support whenever needed. Their bond deepened beyond the typical employer-employee relationship. They became trusted allies, united by a shared vision of creating a better workplace. Together, they spearheaded initiatives that extended far beyond flexible hours or emergency funds. They introduced programs like Family Fridays, where employees could bring their loved ones to the office for fun activities, and Wellness Wednesdays, featuring workshops on mindfulness, nutrition, and stress management. One day, Jeremy announced a special event, a celebration marking the one-year anniversary of the policy changes. The entire company gathered in the main hall, which had been transformed into a festive space filled with balloons, streamers, and tables loaded with food. Employees mingled happily, sharing stories and laughter as music played softly in the background. At the center of the celebration stood Jeremy and Lisa, side by side, ready to address the crowd. As Jeremy stepped up to speak, the room fell silent, anticipation hanging in the air. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady but heartfelt. "A year ago, we embarked on a journey to redefine what it means to be part of TechNano. It hasn't always been easy. We've faced challenges, doubts, and setbacks, but through it all, we've grown stronger together." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces before him. None of this would have been possible without people like Lisa. He turned to her, smiling warmly. She reminded us that behind every employee is a story, a family, and dreams worth fighting for. Because of her courage and resilience, we've built a workplace where everyone can thrive, not just professionally, but personally. The room erupted in applause as Lisa stepped forward, visibly moved by Jeremy's words. When the cheers subsided, she spoke softly but confidently. "I never imagined I'd stand here today, surrounded by so many amazing people who believe in making a difference," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "When I first started at TechNano, I thought success meant working harder, longer, and sacrificing everything else. But now I know that true success comes from supporting each other, lifting each other up, and building a community where no one feels alone." Her words resonated deeply, drawing nods and smiles from everyone in attendance. Afterward, Jeremy and Lisa cut the celebratory cake together, symbolizing the unity and collaboration that had become the foundation of TechNano's culture. As the event wound down, Jeremy found himself reflecting on how much had changed, not just within the company, but within himself. He thought back to the night he followed Lisa home, driven by curiosity and concern. At the time, he hadn't known what to expect or how to help. Now, standing amidst the joy and camaraderie of his employees, he realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could lead to profound change. For Lisa, the transformation was equally remarkable. She no longer felt like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. With the support of her colleagues, her siblings, and Jeremy, she had found a sense of balance and purpose she hadn't believed possible. Her dream of providing her siblings with a bright future was becoming a reality, and she knew she wasn't doing it alone. In the months that followed, TechNano continued to grow, attracting talented individuals eager to join a company that valued its people above all else. Employees often remarked on the unique sense of belonging they felt, an intangible quality that set TechNano apart from other workplaces. And at the heart of it all were Jeremy and Lisa, two unlikely partners whose connection had sparked a revolution. One evening, as Jeremy sat in his office overlooking the bustling city below, he received a text message from Lisa. Attached was a photo of her siblings, smiling, confident, and happy. The caption read simply, "Thank you for believing in us." Jeremy smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment wash over him. Success, he realized, wasn't about